I just threw some stuff in there that they were mowing thoughts. I did some mowing, and
I couldn't tell if it was very specific. This thing is something I came across, or this thing bothers me, or if it was kind of the idea, the equivalent of shower thoughts. You know.
yeah, yeah. So I thought shower thoughts, but I was like, no, but shower thoughts and mowing thoughts are pretty similar. So I thought it's mowing thoughts. Um,
I like that. It's a little bit more unique.
yeah, yeah. So I just wanted to mention that before we talk about those, because I haven't prepared anything, just the mowing thoughts, but it looks like Trump got indicted again.
Yes, fourth
Fourth
indictment
indictment.
from
You know,
Fulton County.
yeah, he had the hat trick already, and he's where does he go for um what is it what's is there a name for the five? But I know six is like the three-peat twice.
I'm not sure if there's a name for 4 or 5. So the only
Oh,
ones I know are single, brace, and hat trick.
Well, I was gonna say I think at this point that we use a a bowling metaphor, because it's like you've got okay. What's 2 strikes in a row? I can't remember. I think 3 is a turkey.
I've never been a big bowler, so you already knew more about that than I did.
Yeah, no, I gotta do some real time
So
answers for this.
So while you look that up, like I actually do have a lot of thoughts on it, but I haven't done a lot of digging into anything either. But the one piece that I saw that I would mention that at face value, I think kind of speaks volumes. Mark Meadows, the former chief of staff, already filed a motion to move it to federal court.
Okay.
Which, one, I would have thought you would have to be actually arraigned and all before you could file a motion, but maybe not. And two, it's a state RICO case. Why would you think a motion to move it to federal court would succeed? And I have a feeling it's a matter of let's let the patsy try this, and then if it's successful, then Trump can do so as well. But if it's laughed off or not successful, then it's quote unquote saving face. I don't see where it would even matter. And this is where I haven't done my research. But under a RICO case, since it's a state case, even if it were tried and moved to federal court, which number one, I don't think it could be because of the nature of the case, but even if it somehow were, I'm pretty sure you still can't pardon a RICO conviction. That's the piece I'm not completely clear on. So the idea would be if it gets moved to federal court, the thought is that supposedly Trump wins the next election, issues pardons for anyone and everyone convicted in federal court. Like that's the quote unquote game plan mentality.
Right, right.
And it certainly makes sense to try, especially when you're, obviously guilty. Maybe that's just my bias, but it's kind of baffling that you would even try. It's a state election, state case, state indictment, state law. Like, where is there any grounds to move it to a federal? Anyway, I have a lot of thoughts, and I have not a lot of research gone into them.
Well, to go with a different sports metaphor, it's par for the course.
It's a more apt sports metaphor, given that he owns a golf course or two.
So I found it's a 4-bagger. He's on the 4-bagger. 3 strikes in a row is a turkey, and 4 strikes in a row is a 4-bagger. So, or
what's
bagger.
5?
It is a brat, referring to bratwurst, but nickel has been used. I don't know why 5 bratwurst would be 5. Also, ham bone is used for 4. A string of 4 strikes is also known as a ham bone.
I think I like ham bone better.
I think I like ham bone better too. So 2 in a row is a double, easy. Double, turkey, bagger, 4-bagger, ham bone, all the same thing. Brat or nickel. 6 is a 6-pack or a 6er. yeah, like looking this up, it's like, why can't you just give me a list, one, two, and I have not uh 3 or 4 links in, because I also don't want to like, three or four links in, I cannot find just like a list of what these are. So
Sounds like there's probably a difference in what's used based on region or something else too. Then
I'm sure there is, but you know, that's what I was looking for. Because we've surpassed the hat trick. That's the term I know pretty well from lots of different sports. Probably the first place I heard it was hockey, then football, then I think it originally came from cricket.
that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, a lot of stuff comes from cricket because it's been played for a long time by a lot of colonizer countries. Speaking of,
I know very little about cricket, but I do know that a lot of terminology has evolved out of that sport. So
I know the line from the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie where Raphael is talking to Casey Jones, and it's like, you got to know what a crumpet is to understand cricket.
I do remember that as well.
Speaking of interesting thing, did you see that? So I saw a thing recently that 3 African countries made it to the round of 16 in the Women's World Cup, and it was fun because I think this is the most African countries that advanced out of the group stages, and they played against their colonizer countries. So South Africa played against the Netherlands, Morocco played against France, and Nigeria played against England. They all lost. All the African countries lost, but it was kind of funny.
I didn't realize that. No,
no, I didn't either. Somebody pointed it out, and I was like, oh, okay.
To an extent, I kind of feel bad that I haven't followed the Women's World Cup much at all. I caught a little bit of a couple of the women's national team, the U.S. national team games. Didn't think they looked very impressive and didn't care to continue to watch them, which turned out to be fairly factual in the long run. But it just, I don't know. Normally I enjoy the Women's World Cup, and this time it did not grasp me. And I don't know if it's just because I've been watching enough of Premier League football at this point that if it's not the Premier League, it's not entertaining, because I don't think that's necessarily the case, but maybe.
You're not. I hope not. So it's really hard for me to express my true thoughts on this because they sound sexist, and it's not based on sexism.
Real quick, before you launch into that, this might help with the segue. I will say the last time I watched the men's national team, which was not too terribly long ago, they looked more enjoyable to watch than they ever have in the past that I recall. And it's because they reminded me more of how Premier League teams play. So I don't know if that helps or hurts the transition, but that was something that I noticed recently, that they played with more energy and just general movement than I'm accustomed to.
I have had a hard time watching the United States men's team play for maybe a few years. Let's see. I think in 2018 they didn't qualify.
Correct.
Yeah, and I think prior to that, there were some managerial decisions that were made that seemed kind of stupid. I can't think of a better word. And so it was off-putting, and I've said this before, and it shouldn't be any surprise to anyone. But if the United States wasn't putting in third and fourth tier athletes into their program, we would win the World Cup all the time. Like we'd have more World Cup, we'd have more stars on our jersey than any other country. I think, just because we just have a huge pool of talent, but we put our top athletes go to the NFL, the NBA, and the MLB, and so. Yeah, it's just really hard to feel like an underdog when this country is, well, some of the people in this country are so over the top wealthy, and we're playing other nations, like other nations in our confederation are like, it's the only country that in our confederation that comes close to our country's wealth is Canada, and I don't even think that it has the same GDP as California. So I don't know, just like the world's the socioeconomic issues in this country have ruined the sport for me in some ways.
I can understand that.
And FIFA's not helping.
Yeah, that's
even been more detrimental. I had a hard time watching matches for the Men's World Cup because of FIFA.
I mean, none of the regulating agencies have been very helpful. Yeah, we'll leave it at that, because I feel like that might spiral into a separate discussion that maybe warrants a little more preparation.
Well, I will say about the Women's World Cup, I tried watching it in 2007, and it was just like, so I found a match where the U.S. was clearly the better team. I think they were playing Brazil, and they had a single goal. I don't know how many goals were scored in the match, but they were ahead by a goal, and there was something like 10 minutes left to play, and with 10 minutes left in regulation time, they would take the ball to the corner and just stand there and like for 10 minutes, and that was like so off-putting. And throughout the match, it felt slow. Like the speed of the players running up and down the pitch was slow. And I don't want to say these women are bad, because I've seen some amazing highlights come out of even college, college level. These are amateur players, college level women's teams. I've seen some of the most amazing plays come out of come from that level. And so it's not necessarily. I know that the optics are bad on this, and I'm going to come across sexist, but it's not the highest quality of play. It's like the MLS. I don't really enjoy watching MLS because it's not the highest quality of play, and those are all men. And I don't think Lionel Messi being on Miami's team is going to make a difference.
No, if anything, it just shows how poor so many of our athletes are against an aging Messi.
Right. I mean, I think I can't remember if I told you this or not, but a couple of times when I lived in New York, I saw Barcelona play. The first time I saw them play, they played against the Red Bulls, and that was just. I mean, it was cool to see Barcelona. Like I got to see I got to see Ronaldinho and Puyol and Piqué and Iniesta and a lot of the players you would recognize from the 2000s. And then the second time I saw them play against the MLS All-Stars. So it was like the best MLS players, and it was still lopsided. They just, there was no challenge, and I thought, they're not going to put a lot into the match because you don't want to get hurt in an exhibition match in the United States when you have a season coming up. You don't want to risk that. And so that was, okay, that's how it was. And so those matches were like, I went to them because of, I didn't have plans to go to Barcelona anytime soon to see them play there. So yeah, I went and saw them, and it's a little bit disappointing. But then, a couple of weeks ago, I told you I got to see Barcelona play Milan, and that was way better because, even though it was an exhibition match, they were evenly, the skill, they were evenly matched teams, and that was a lot. But that's probably one of the best matches I've seen. I will say I saw a USA World Cup 2006 World Cup qualifier in 2005 against Guatemala. That's the second best match I've ever seen. But yeah, it's a lot better to watch an evenly balanced set of teams play against each other. So
yeah, at some point within the next few years, I'm going to have to plan another trip across the pond because I need to actually visit Anfield on a match day and not in general. Because just watching the players play when they're playing the Premier League matches as opposed to the friendlies or anything else, the level of intensity shown is just so much higher. And there's no way that can't be a phenomenal experience.
I want to go. Yeah, I would love to go to a Premier League match. Any of them, like any one of the 38, would love to see that. And and I would like to. I'd love to see a Champions League match.
Yeah, I'd like to hit a couple just because I'd like to be able to compare. You hear so many people talk about Anfield being an experience. If you listen to players talk about the energy and everything else from the fans, and opposing teams too, and not just Liverpool, right? It's everybody talks about the fans making a very felt emotion on the field. So I'd like to compare that to something like the Etihad.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was laughing. I don't know if it got picked up by my microphone, but I was laughing because I came across a video of English people singing. I don't know. I can't remember. I don't know where Suarez. Is he still at United?
Suarez went to Barcelona, and then I don't remember where he went.
Oh no, he was never at United. He was at
Liverpool.
City.
He was
Suarez played for.
Yeah.
Anyway, they were singing a song. They were singing. So I went to a DC United, Red Bulls DC United match some time ago when I lived in New York, and we in the United States, MLS, they do have the singing there too, but it's not nearly as melodic and clever as in England. But I think I told you they were. It's more of a chanting. It's the whatever can fit into the rhythm of USA, USA, whatever fits into there. that style of quote unquote singing or chanting. That's what's heard in this country. Very simple, very straightforward.
Very indicative of the majority of the population.
Right, but I was going to say it also draws people in. But they were singing at this DC Red Bull, so it was a Red Bulls home game, playing DC United, and one day maybe I'll go on a tirade about the naming conventions of MLS teams, but not now. But the chant was "Fuck DC United," and it was in a very similar rhythm of whatever rhythm fit those syllables. That was very similar to the USA, and not melodic or harmonious at all. But this video I saw, these English folks were singing about Suarez's teeth being offsides. So for listeners, if you don't know who Luis Suarez is, he is kind of an infamous. He's a fantastic player, but infamous for biting people. He is a. Is he Argentine? Is he Argentine?
Uruguayan.
Or Uruguayan, yes, Uruguay. I knew it was one of the two. Because Uruguay often, from time to time, they have a high quality national team. But yeah, he's Uruguayan. There's been a whole set of reports done about how he's got a problem where he bites other players, like he's 3 years old, and he has a noticeable overbite. So the song was about his teeth being offsides.
It's probably why Liverpool picked him up when they did too, because he played. I looked it up. He played for Ajax before he played for Liverpool, and then he went to Barcelona, and then the past couple of years he's kind of bounced around.
Was he at City at all?
Not in the list that I saw, no. But the Uruguayan national team reminds you of City's uniforms sometimes.
Oh, so, yeah, that might be why I have that in my head.
Yeah, I think so. But when he left Barcelona, or I don't know if it's exactly when he left, whenever it was that Barcelona basically crumbled was when Suarez left, Messi decided to leave, and somebody else left. I don't remember there was a chain of events there. And I know it was because Barcelona had a number of financial issues where they couldn't pay things either. Um, but
Surprising.
2020 to 2023, really bad for Barcelona in a number of fronts. And I guess from what I've heard, things are starting to trend better for them. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, because they dominated La Liga between Barcelona and Madrid. They just sort of owned that league. You know, Atletico Madrid would come up, and you know they'd rear their head a few times, but yeah, they were, for at least a decade and a half, they were just, you know, pretty unstoppable in their league.
Not to derail the conversation, but I have to mention it here because we're talking about Barcelona's financial issues. Chelsea have spent a boatload of money since their acquisition and are apparently now being reported by multiple clubs for what would be violations of the financial fair play or whatever the rules are under everybody's guidelines except for the Premier League. So the Premier League is planning a vote to bring their guidelines in line with like UEFA. Just figured I'd mention it just because they just recently stole a couple of... hijacked. That's the phrasing. Hijacked a couple of transfers that we were bidding on as well. In fairness, I think we were just really stupid with our transfer business for some reason. Like that was the dumbest set of things to occur.
Dumber than Manchester United?
Well, let's not get crazy. I mean, it sounds like with this particular scenario, there was a target. For some reason or another, we didn't just pay the money to get it done, and then switched to a different target that didn't want to come to us anyway, and then went back to our backup choice, which, like, I would snub you if I was the player. It makes no sense the way that unfolded. So I expect there's a lot more to the story that will never be known because it historically is not the way Liverpool does business in the transfer market. You know, normally you hear about it and it's a done deal kind of thing. So I'm sure there's more to it than kind of flip-flopping back and forth, but it's not a good look.
No. It's got to be frustrating too, so I'm
also
pleased.
An awful lot of Saudi money just snapping up players that makes
true.
A really strange kind of window.
I'm pleased with Arsenal's acquisitions thus far. I will say though that it's weird to be pleased with their acquisitions because for so long under Wenger he would, you know, he was very much looking to the words, man. He was very much looking. He's very much into taking young, up and coming talent, or you know, could be up and coming talent, and developing them through the under teams, the younger teams,
the academy.
So,
which it's funny. I appreciate that view to an extent because there are a number of players. If you look at Liverpool's lineup, like Alexander-Arnold is probably the most infamous example at this point, only because of the amount of time now that he's had with the senior team. But Harvey Elliott has been extremely promising. Same kind of story, came up through the academy. Ben Doak, actually I don't think he was an academy prospect. I think he was a transfer at a young age. But Curtis Jones, another one. But there have been multiple in recent years where Liverpool have done the same thing. And I think the big difference is Liverpool haven't been afraid to spend the money when we don't have a prospect that might be able to fill this role and we need to fill it. Let's get the proper person in the role. And that, from everything that I've heard described under Wenger, was the lack of wanting to do that second step.
Yeah, and I think that was That worked for a while, but it ended up being somewhat detrimental to his towards the end of his career. I think you've got to play. I think you've got to balance both. It's like if you've got a good group of kids coming up in the academy that can go to the senior team, then maybe you can save some money. But if not, then maybe it's time to, you know, put some money into some good firepower and a good defense. So it's definitely no easy thing, and I'm sure there's lots of politics, lots of red tape, lots of egos involved.
Yeah. So far, the only thing that I can say about the opening weekend is I was not overly happy with the result, but it was better than it could have been.
I'm a little disappointed that you got put into the top of the second half of the table based on uh, alphabetical order. Because there's several teams that had the same outcome, same goal differential, like all stats are the same. And it's like, oh, I think Liverpool's only behind Chelsea because Chelsea comes before L in the alphabet. That's the only explanation.
Yeah, I mean, Chelsea was who we played opening day, so it's part of why I also picked on them for the transfer.
Yeah.
In all fairness, I don't think either one of the transfer targets would have really fit us, but I'm not a decision maker, so we'll just leave it at somebody thought they might, and neither one are coming to us, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
Should we move into your mowing thoughts?
Yeah, let's do. This has all been like similar to mowing thoughts. It was a very long, not segue, but very long preamble. No, it's not even a preamble because it has nothing to do with my mowing thoughts. It was just talk about stuff that was on my mind, I guess.
Yeah, but it was interesting enough that that part will at least be included as
pre-roll
totally. or yeah.
Pre-flight. That's what they're calling it.
Okay, I'll switch from pre-roll to pre-flight. I like that better.
You know what? You can do whatever you want because it's our show.
Just type a bunch of consonants and leave it at that, and let's see how. Random unintelligible chapter names. Maybe I should start doing that.
Yeah.
Make it a show gimmick.
Yeah, so I don't remember which one of these mowing thoughts I had first, but they're listed in order when I remembered to put them in the notes. And so the first one I had a thought about, and this sort of fits in with like a number of topics that we've had or our direction that we've taken our discussions to, but and you'll see the link I make here in just a moment. But our IT jobs, the 21st, the thought I had was our IT jobs, the 21st century blue collar labor. That doesn't mean that what has been historically known as blue collar labor doesn't exist in this country, but as a country of services and trying to sell insurance to everyone else, or each other over and again, we certainly don't have nearly as many manufacturing jobs in this country, and we don't have. I don't want to say we don't have a lot of, stripping the land of its natural resources, because we do that, but I don't know. I just feel like this IT work prior to the .com bust was kind of it's new and lofty, and then I think after the .com bust, it very much settled into I'll just say a blue collar type force.
So the way I read it was more along the lines of the number of people employed in that type of work. Prior to relatively modern times, the majority of people in the country would have been employed in some level of blue collar work, or something that we would at least equate to a similar type of field. And I would wager that the majority of people currently are employed in some sort of office work instead. And so the way I interpreted the thought was more a matter of kind of twofold. One, the number of people who are actually actively engaging in this type of work between blue collar work and we'll just call them generic IT jobs. And two, the types of jobs that are currently in flux or maybe questionable with the advancement of technology. So if you go, a number of years back, blue collar workers had very similar thoughts and fears and concerns surrounding automation and robotics as what I would say IT workers do currently with the proliferation of AI style resources. And we're certainly not at the same there, or not at the same place, but I see that as a good parallel. And so those were the two ways that I kind of interpreted the thought, and it's why I added a line item about it kind of depends on what direction AI goes.
Yeah. My thoughts along the lines where had to do more with the economic separation of productivity and wages, and and it made me think of, like, even though it's like if you were to start comparing productivity and wages to 50 years ago, I think IT jobs would squarely fit into a blue collar range, or a blue collar. I think it'd be comparable. Like, it'd be comparable.
It's tricky, right? So
it's a wet finger. It's a wet finger in the air.
Well, the past couple of years have really kind of fucked up those types of comparisons. So,
yes, they certainly have. But even before that, we were on that. I mean, we've been on that trend for like the last 40 years. Our whole lifetime, we've been on that trend.
Yeah, I certainly follow. I think part of why I interjected and made the statement is I really do think now, today, 2023, you might be able to make the argument that quality of life for blue-collar workers back 20, 30, 40 years ago, take kind of whatever pick on time frame, might have been better in relation to income versus expense cost. But it's questionable because typically IT work does pay at least on the higher end.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I was going with the whole, it's questionable and it's really skewed, and I don't have a good feel for it after the past couple of years. Prior to the past couple of years, I would say very strongly that IT work would still be in the better position compared to blue collar work.
Right. You're not going to get black lung sitting at your cubicle.
Right. But even then, from a pay perspective, even the lower income IT work up to a couple of years ago still paid significantly better than any kind of, well, that may not quite be accurate. If you spend enough time in a trade, you can get pretty well paid. So I don't want to make a bad blanket statement, but for the majority of people who are in early stages of their career, IT work generally pays leaps and bounds better than the early years of trades work.
I would agree with that. I definitely agree with that. And I don't think that I don't necessarily think that the pay, we're entering in a place where sometimes the pay is not exactly the issue here, but the nature of corporate consolidation is also causing lots of problems. So if you look at the housing market, it may or may not be artificially high, and there are definitely lots of, we'll call them investors, buying and selling properties, to the extent that, like, just from 3 years ago, it has gotten significantly more difficult to purchase a house. And we're not talking, it's like, it used to be the comparisons we'd, prior to the pandemic, the comparisons we'd make were, well,
it was more generational comparisons.
Right. We'd make, that's what I was going to say. We'd make comparisons of, like, this generation before us, but now we don't even have to go that far back. We can go back less than half a decade and be like, yeah, it kind of sucks to try to buy a house today relative, to 3 years ago. And unless you're already in the system, if you're already in the system and you own a house, if you're selling one and buying another one, makes it a little bit better, but it's like I think about I have friends that live in a desirable neighborhood, desirable part of town that absolutely could not afford to buy in that part of town now based on how, good for them, their property values are skyrocketing, but at the same time it's like, the why isn't our income why aren't wages matching productivity and cost of everything?
To me, this is such a fascinating choice. I'm going to pause real quick and just interject I'm going to break the fourth wall kind of thing. At some point, I'm going to grip how many times I say fascinating, because I know that it's overused by the time we get done with an episode. And I recognize that that's going to end up becoming an inside joke, like the show title that I used it for not too long ago.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure
that.
I emphasize this because I recognize it. And now we'll go back to my thought. Why I think this is so fascinating is because we just recently bought, right? And in the neighborhood that we're in, I don't think we would be able to live here for what we were able to buy into anymore. And that's only a 4 or 5 month difference.
Yeah, I know.
And I know full well, 2 years ago, it would have been more economical had we been looking and trying to move around. But then for the house that we sold, we wouldn't have gotten near what we got for it. So overall, I think we navigated the timing of selling the house we were in and buying relatively well to make the ridiculous profits on the sell and the ridiculous increases in cost on the purchase kind of a wash. We'll see long term, right, how that plays out. But that's my initial feel. But just over a few months, and just with fairly minimal investments in this house, just to update a couple of things and make things a little less, 60s. Already, I am pretty sure we could sell this for a fairly comfortable profit. And that's kind of insane.
It is. It most definitely is.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail us, but I have never seen the housing market be, and full disclosure, I don't watch the housing market. That's not my day job. I don't, monitor it all the time.
But you hear about it.
But I pay a little bit of attention to it as a homeowner, right? I think that's kind of a responsible thing to do. I've never seen it be in such a ridiculous state as it has been over the past 2-3 years, much less the past decade. And I seriously do not know how any subsequent generation will ever afford home ownership if it's not something that is family assisted in acquisition.
Yeah, there's something's got to give, and I don't know how or when it will, but it is, we talk about our generation was really the first generation to have the difficulties that it's having buying a house. Previous generation, I don't want to say that it wasn't, that it didn't require hard work, but previous generations didn't have their wages and wages and productivity matched pretty well, and we didn't have this widening gap between the haves and the have-nots. I think there's somebody told me, and I haven't fact checked this, but somebody said that the European Union has categorized the United States as a whatever the appropriate equivalent of what we would call a third world country, because we have so many people living in poverty in this country.
So I don't know, I saw something similar. I don't know if it's the European Union specifically, or a subset of countries, member countries, but I know Norway very specifically has called out the United States as a third world country due to the issues with healthcare, we'll say, as opposed to what the country is. Well, I say that because it would not be a leap of faith at all, or even much of a leap, to think that the EU has done something similar, but maybe not official classification because of diplomatic relationship. Norway certainly doesn't care too much about what we do because they're happy, rightfully so.
Are they happy? I mean, they're apart from us, but are they happy? I don't know.
They're happier than we are, by all accounts.
Well, I mean,
by all quantifiable accounts. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I was going to say you incur. I would expect that they're not so scared about incurring any, significant medical bills. So there's that. But I remember hearing.
I'm trying so hard to refrain from diving into a rant about universal health care because that is such a trigger topic for me at this point.
And I remember hearing it. Go ahead.
And it really shouldn't be a quote-unquote trigger topic because I don't have chronic health issues. I just see the drastic benefits to the majority of people, and it's tough not to be angry about the lack of that access.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I don't have a lot of, I mean, I have an autoimmune disease, and I happen to be in a 6.5 year remission. So, yay for me. And but I keep I was like, what if I wasn't? What if I was one of the folks that wasn't? And there are people out there that are paying. I don't. It's like I don't know. It's just yeah. I am affected in a similar way to you. I was thinking about it made me. I was gonna say I remember an American comedian speaking, and I can't remember. They were saying it's like the reason these European people do so many fun, adventurous things is because they don't have to worry about healthcare. They do something to themselves. They go see a doctor, and it's no big deal.
I was just thinking about something similar because I was thinking about the nature of my injuries typically are relatively self-inflicted at this point, or let's rephrase that. The nature of me seeking medical care, for the most part, is self-inflicted. And I would save so much money if I wasn't having to pay, X amount of dollars toward a deductible and everything else. Like, just the way our insurance system and healthcare system runs from a billing perspective, I would pay drastically less if you increased my taxes to a point to offset medical expenses for the entire population instead of worrying about just what I pay for co-pays on top of what I pay for insurance. It's fucking ridiculous.
I was just saying that's the goddamn truth.
It just and the fact that so many people don't grasp the monetary difference. I don't get it. I really don't. How can you not think through that if a billion people
No, you said it
pay,
right there. You have to think through it.
I know.
And then you have to be able to, and it's not that people aren't too smart enough to think through this. I think that they genuinely are. The harder part is having to accept that somehow you have this core value or this core knowledge that was developed as early as it could be developed, that this current system is the best possible thing that you could have. Maybe it's not good, but it's way better than everywhere else in the world.
All right, I'm going to take us down this rabbit hole. So I have a theory, and it's just my theory, but the majority of people have bought into the hype that you get or you reap what you sow. We'll use that phrasing very specifically for other reasons that will become evident later if you're not necessarily paying attention. Hard work pays off. The individual can do whatever they want. Dare to dream. Blah, 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 blah. Take your pick. It's all the same story. And it makes sense. I get it. And I get the appeal because it means you as a person can be born into whatever situation and you can change the outcome of your situation. But the reality is that's not a guarantee. Sure, we have one-off stories where someone was born into a really bad situation and they were able to make something positive out of it. But we have 20 stories, or that positive story that did not have that positive outcome. And the
I think the
reason
number's
we
higher
don't,
than 20.
oh, I do too. I'm trying to be very conservative in my numbers because I don't have the research to back it up, right? Like it's,
Sure.
I know full well I can do the research and I can get great numbers that make it absolutely asinine that we even believe this success story pipe dream that has been sold.
You know what it is?
It's marketing.
Well,
Marketing 101.
It's marketing 101 for uh, uh, a bigger version of Las Vegas. You know, it's like how the house always wins. The house will
Yes.
always win.
Yes.
Same thing in this situation. The house is always going to win. The house being the medical.
What's
the health? The private
the healthcare industrial
the private
complex. I
right
like
the
that
privately
term.
the privately owned healthcare industrial complex.
Just like the military
folks,
industrial complex.
exactly. I know. I don't remember who said that initially. It was in the 50s, I think, though.
So,
50s.
And I want to make sure I'm fairly clear here that the issue isn't the desire or decision to pursue an alternative healthcare platform. Just like there's an argument to be made for military presence, involvement, and everything else. Like there's no attack on the fact that these services exist or don't exist or whatever. Like that's not the point. The point is we have set ourselves up in a fashion where profits drive decisions. And as long as profits drive decisions, those who are the recipients of those profits will continue to maximize them. It's basic behavioral science. It's basic economic science. It's basic. What else would you classify? Just whole reward versus risk, justification. For every decision a person is presented with, where there is a quantifiable reward increase versus risk increase, the person will choose the reward. It's very simple when you break it down to that type of mindset. And the problem comes in when you do not have a set of either regulations or operating restrictions or some other set of policies or anything that confines those rewards to a logical percentage of operating value or risk or whatever. Like for each industry, I would expect you to kind of figure out what the best measurement would be to correlate reward versus service performed. And we don't have that in a capitalistic free market society because we think the existence of a capitalistic free market society regulates the percentage of reward to services rendered. And the fact of the matter is it doesn't. And it's bullshit if you ever think that in a completely free and open system, anybody is going to self-restrict what they could get as a reward unless there's a reason to do so. That's the problem with a quote-unquote free market capitalistic society. No one is saying drop capitalism completely, even though, toss a coin. Maybe it's better to go somewhere else. The problem actually comes into this whole free market aspect where their desire is not to have regulation. And if you turn around and look at utility companies as a counterexample, where there is regulation about how much profit utility companies can actually report over an operating year without having to turn around and give that excess amount of money back or reinvest it or do something else with it, at least at that point, even though those companies are still generating insane profits and still paying people insane amounts of money when you talk about senior management, they're not fucking over their customers repeatedly day after day, month after month, year after year, in every conceivable fashion that they can come up with.
Yeah, the problem is that we're all over here being salaried and hourly workers in an industry that's owned by actual capitalists. None of us are actually capitalists. Most of us are not capitalists. You've got to own something to be a capitalist. You've got to be able to repossess something or take something away from someone when they miss a payment. And just like everyone else, there's this dream that we're, workers and consumers that are trying to have this solidarity with millionaires and multimillionaires and billionaires. We are not them. We are different from them. We just think we're them. Just like it's great to hear that one story out of many that somebody has really turned their life around or has really, been the one and the idea that we talk about being capitalist is similar to that, where we think we're in the same level as people who actually own capital.
I hesitate to necessarily say this, only because of the level of controversy that it could stir. But at the same time, it's kind of like, why not? There's an interesting relationship between those who own capital now and the development of the country and what type of capital those particular individuals owned and negotiated in and traded in to build what we currently refer to as capital. And I'm trying to kind of leave it vague and politically correct, not because I think that I don't think there's a direct relationship between I bought and sold slaves and I buy and sell real estate now. That's not how I want to describe it.
No.
But generational wealth was not built on real estate when the country was founded. Generational wealth typically has been built on the exploitation of other individuals. And even today, you could say a lot of generational wealth is built on the exploitation of the working class, or the
corporations are built on the exploitation of the working class.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm wanting to get at, is that there's a level of, in this type of economic situation, there's a desire to exploit every possible avenue for those people who comprise your workforce to increase your profits. And there's nothing regulating or restricting that type of behavior.
That kind of makes, not to derail this, but that's the reason why it was so easy to joke about a bunch of billionaires dying from the implosion of a poorly built submarine. It's like, yes, it is tragic that people lost their lives. It's always tragic when people lost their lives. It certainly affects somebody, but it's really, because of that, it's kind of easy to, it's kind of easy to dehumanize them because of their class. I think, even beyond that, I think it is kind of, it's also related to how people behave during the pandemic. We saw a certain sect of people that thought the casual normalization of death for the poor, because capitalists had no viable solutions for them and prioritized the economy over everybody else's lives. That's another reason I think it's really easy to dehumanize that group of people. Like, it's just over and over our system, or the way our society and the way our governance and laws have been created. It's really easy for the haves, the 1%, the 2%, to just repeatedly rape the rest of the people in this country. And at some point it's gonna give. It's the levee won't hold. We're seeing, you see bits and pieces of it, with the folks that just decided not to go back to work. I think we're going to see more of that coming up in the next few years.
I think the way I would describe it would be it sounds kind of contrite. The way I would describe it, though, would be people who, generally speaking, actually formed the core essential worker group. To see jokes about someone being included in that group, for example, someone who dressed as a mascot or something else, like just the absurdity with which we identified essential workers illustrates part of the problem, in that we try to define certain things in a way that meets what we expect for a normal business as usual type of functioning. And so requiring you to be in person to fulfill your role automatically classified you as an essential worker. It didn't matter how absurd the role was. It mattered that you had to be in person to fulfill it. And that kind of illustrates the problem with thinking in this particular regard, is that it's not the role, it's not the person, it's not anything ancillary to the job function. The job function requires you to be present. Therefore, the job function requires you to be designated essential. And it's such a utilitarian way of looking at an individual's life that just cannot be sustained.
We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
Or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work or are interested in listening to our new after-show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap.